backdrop, we have the...
It is gorgeous here. It's so
and
lovely,
it's
honestly.
only just
yeah.
like steps outside the back door. So we like this spot for many reasons, but it's also very, very accessible.
Yeah.
The Druid group is one of the older groups, and
Yeah.
so some people have difficulty
Absolutely,
accessing.
yeah.
There are much younger groves and seed groups, but our one just happens to be a little bit older. And it's also handy for if we get visitors. I'm thinking the labyrinth would be lovely here, by the way.
Yeah.
But if we get visitors from the mainland, it's just really handy for them because they can hop over and back.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right at the port.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And yet you would never really
Yeah.
know it,
No,
would
you wouldn't. Absolutely. And you'd come right past all of
Yeah.
this. You'd never notice here.
Yeah. So there's something going to happen in this area that I'm not quite sure what
Yeah.
yet.
It is such a nice space to have. Like, it's the kind of thing you wanted when you were a kid out the back of your house.
Well, see, I can't that.
Yeah.
I've played up and down here my whole life.
Oh,
and
brilliant.
It is lovely.
So have you lived here your whole life then? Amazing. Perfect.
I've been away, like most of us do. We go away, we come back.
Yep.
We think, oh yeah, it's not as boring.
Everybody does, yeah, that's it, isn't it? Like,
Where is it you're from?
so I live in Dunfermline,
right.
so Fife, but I study in Edinburgh.
Lovely.
But we were sort of tasked with a 48-hour survival guide project where you were to go somewhere you weren't familiar with for 48 hours. Try and experience as much as possible of the place and then find something to focus on, and I was really interested in the sort of Celtic culture and then kind of looking into the Druids, but obviously I don't know anything about any of it, so I thought it would be something really good to research.
Oh yeah,
You know what I
and we
mean?
could help you with anything at all. Just contact myself, Debbie,
Amazing.
Steve, whatever. Would you like a cup of tea?
I would love a cup of tea. Yeah. Do you want me to take my shoes off because they're quite muddy? Are you sure?
Yeah, it's all white stuff. This cottage is kind of family. We've got a big family.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a family overflow. So when friends, family, sometimes workshop facilitators from Heather Lodge, they'll bunk in here. And it's just really useful for all sorts of things.
So is it sort of a community space?
Well, this is, Moss Cottage belongs to my husband and myself.
Right.
Heather Lodge, which includes Banner and the main building, also belongs to us, but it's rented to CIC.
Right, okay.
But that sounds like we're just the landlords, which is...
But you're not part of the...
Yeah, but we're part of that whole...
That's nice.
And the idea to build that kind of healing community was definitely what started it all off. Because a lot of us were therapists working in isolation. So it's not unrelated to the whole Druidic thing, because that's an ethos.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we started, we wanted to, there was an element of that pagan Druidic values, which is to honour all living beings. And to honour equally, like male, female, and everything in between.
Yep.
I feel with the patriarchal religions, we're very heavy on the female dad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Not.
Yeah, 100%. No, I would agree.
So I really love that. And so there are Druids on the island who practice in a solitary way, right? And they're very private, and it's going on for long. Yeah, there's also a lot of pagans on the island, but again, they're private and solitary. So what we've done is bring it out a bit, really. All the rituals, they're
Do you think it's a fear thing? Is that why people practice in private? If they fear being judged, or is it because it is such a private thing to them? Both, yeah.
Because the ones who are quieter and more private have been doing this for a long, long time.
Right.
When probably there was more
view on the church has absolutely changed. Yeah.
And I think those of us whose beliefs are pagan are beginning to realise that there's an awful lot of people holding the same beliefs out there, much more than we maybe imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if they're practicing in their own way in private and don't necessarily follow a particular religion or belief, but they hold themselves in certain set of values. Yeah.
And that's almost a definition actually of being pagan, because everybody seems to practice it in a different way.
Yeah.
And you can be a pagan Druid, a Christian Druid, a Muslim Druid, a Buddhist Druid. So it brings a lot of the different paths together. And it's basically a nature, well, depending on how you see it. I see it as a nature religion. It could equally well be a nature philosophy.
Yeah.
But the roots are to honour nature and to see the divine in everything, in the tree that's trying to come in the window right now.
Yeah.
So it's a lovely, I think it's a lovely.
Yeah, just the bits of research that I've done, like it does seem like a very open, very caring, just a happy kind of space to have, which is quite a nice thing, do you know what I mean?
That's definitely been my experience of it. And after we have a ritual, which is it's celebration as well as honouring. We don't really use the word. Sit down. We don't use the word worship really. I've noticed there's not that, but there's honouring.
Yeah.
A lot of honouring goes on. You see the spirit in the rivers, in the trees, the gods and goddesses, and certainly we're coming towards the rutting season, the stags. So there's a bit of the wild god.
Yeah. Well, is there a translation of Arran as Land of the Stags or something? There's a Gaelic.
There's a bit of that. The one that I'm more familiar with is there's two. It's known as Island and Avalach. So it sounds awful like Avalon, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I have a theory that there's lots of Avalons
Yeah,
over the place.
absolutely.
So Island of the Apples, but also Island of the Healers. Do I have a tree here? Like Skye as Island of the Warriors.
Yeah.
So we're Islands of the Healers. And more and more seems to be coming back to that. There are so many. Since we started Heather Lodge, we've never ever looked for anybody to come and join us.
People just find you.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
been a perceived gap or whatever, and there's and all of a sudden there's somebody on the doorstep saying, "Oh, I do this and this, but my background used to be that."
Yeah, amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that is brilliant. That is amazing how that happens.
It's
So
really
it's
lovely.
the sort of that like natural like alignment of things. You know what I mean? Like the gap will be filled by somebody. Yeah.
And I think it also shows how strong, how important intention is.
Yeah.
So if you put an intention out there, and you really do it, and it's also something for good, it's answered, and
it's a lovely way of thinking. Do you know what I mean? Like no need to push for things because it will. Yeah.
You can't sit back and be lazy about it, but also you can't push. And we did have a wee go at pushing for. It was somebody we all do other things, and so we really needed somebody to help take forward a bit of admin and.
Yeah, absolutely, the boring bits.
Yeah, pretty much actually. That's really saying it. And there was somebody who seemed to be well qualified for that, but it did not work out well. So we just bided our time, put in a little bit more effort, and it's all coming together now, it's all working out. So that as well, I think, is a kind of Druidic way, really, I would think. But do you have specific questions? Because I could wrap it on.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of things noted down.
Really
Most of it was just to have a sort of discussion and just hear the things that you had to say and stuff that you thought was of value. But I'll get up I made a few notes I didn't want to have like a set list because I wanted it to be more like a chat than me sitting down and interviewing you. Do you know what I mean?
Do you take milk and tea?
I do, just a wee drop, please. Thank you. So initially around, can you tell me what it is, what it means to be a Druid? You've kind of answered that question, I feel. And sort of where the roots of it lie, like where does it come from? Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think obviously, like you said, that's quite difficult because there are loads of different kind of forms, which maybe is an answer in itself. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and there's also the recognition that in OBOD will be a really useful source for you. That's
I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. Even if you just Google OBOD, it'll come up. So it's Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids.
Okay.
And they're a good, solid, reliable source. But
thank you so
we're recognising that actually, help yourself if you want a biscuit. We don't know what the Druids back in the day.
Well, that's it, because a lot of the stuff I was finding was basically like the Druids left no written accounts of anything that they did. It's just sort of stories and things that have been passed down. So did you?
That's right.
How did you find? What would you? How would you refer to it? A religion or a belief system or a both? Yeah,
There's
perfect.
a lot of, I think, in pagan beliefs and also in Druidry, it's not an either or, it's an and.
It's in everything, yeah.
And so there's been, I would say, there's been a lot of early stuff which is quite patriarchal but I would say Philip Cargone, who is a psychotherapist, but was the last chief Druid. There's not really a hierarchy, but there needs to be somebody to kind of put
absolutely, there always does.
So he was the last chief, so he is a very good source. You could listen to Tina the Druid, which is really rather nice.
Yeah.
Tina the Druid on YouTube.
Sounds lovely, yeah.
Or also the current chief, Ema, she does fireside chats.
Okay.
That's what she calls. So it's fireside chats, and she's Irish. So it's EIMER.
EIMER.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be able to find it. There won't be many.
Oh, you will. Once you begin to Google that, I'll be throwing them at you. So from the little bits that we've known, has emerged a way of meeting the world according to these sort of principles, but in the here and now.
Yeah.
Because there are some things I'm sure they did back in the day that it wouldn't be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some. There was a lot of things I was coming across, and obviously, by the sounds of it, was written by somebody who was maybe biased against what was going on, and like obviously there was some things which there's a reason why. Do you know what I mean? But some things I was reading were very biased, and there was no good light shone on it, and I found that like quite disheartening, because it's obviously not. That's obviously not. When anyone I've spoken to so far, they all say, I mean, they're all such lovely, happy people. They're all very content, very nice. Do you know what I mean? And there was no target towards anybody who kind of followed this faith or religion, but there was definitely a sort of negative thing. But I think in the view of like the Christian church and things, it was seen as almost like a satanic kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, that's what they did with so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, we've got
demonising
coming up, and we see that as they're all important, but deeply important, because we do honour to, as well as there's a lot of the old traditions that are fun. Dress up if you want, as many skulls as you can manage, hang them about the place, all sort of apples and hazelnuts and all the rest of it. We have all these things, but it was the Christians who invented Halloween, invented the devil as well, come to think of it, and then has demonised what went before in order to take over. As
with a lot of things in the world. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely.
It's like it's coming from such a fearful place. If you feel you have to squash what went before.
Absolutely. But that's what it is. It's fear of something that's quite powerful and actually has no bad cause. And that if people knew that, they would turn around and go, oh well, then why should we be afraid of it if it's not bad? But
exactly. Yeah. It's about exerting power, and often exerting power over women.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. Yeah.
We've not even opened that book because that's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the things I was reading were kind of coming down to that, and that I think that's where I was getting a bit bogged down, because there's a lot of different ways to follow this kind of chain, lots of people to talk to, and it was just to try and kind of gauge like what is the reality in the modern day.
I think that's a good way to approach it, and you're very wise to narrow that down, because it would do your head in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so much.
100%, and it would be too easy to like disregard. Do you know what I mean? What's maybe come before because of certain things, but.
So what it boils down to is, in the here and now, we take some of the, as I understand it, we take some of the basic precepts and knowledge from Druidry, bring it up to date by interacting with nature. So a lot of what we do is, for example, we do my best to keep the river banks clean and clear. We to spend all our rituals, just about as much as we can. We do outdoors, and we promote people's awareness of that, because once you have relationship to something, you're a lot less likely to trash it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my husband actually, he's a GP, but he's also a Shinrin Yoku practitioner at forest bathing.
Okay.
So it's very useful because he takes groups out into the woods or the forest, slows things down, applies a little bit of science, a little bit of mindfulness, a little bit of creativity, and hope to just shift how we relate and to bring more of a respect to that.
Yeah.
When I joined OBOD, there's a choice. You can just join, be a druid, take part in your local shenanigans, whatever, enjoy, and do the rituals. And there's always a bit of an after party. Everybody brings food and meat. There's a lot of meat, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Anyway, we share, and usually there's music as well. So you can do that, that's fine, or you can choose to follow the grades, I suppose you would call it. So there's a bardic grade, and then as you progress through that, understanding that it's not something you learn and then you know it. It's very experiential. It's like a psychotherapy course.
Okay.
Not surprising because it was written this way.
Yeah.
But it's made as experiential as possible. So it would not be possible to go through that grade just reading and regurgitating something.
No, you have to actually live in it. Yeah.
You really do, because they can tell.
Yeah.
And then you can, again, if you wish, apply to enter the OV grade. So I'm pretty much heading, hopefully, towards the end of that. But with that, there are so many interesting things to follow.
Yeah.
You learn about herbs, you learn about divination. There's all sorts to learn. But a lot of what's used as a tool, a teaching tool, are the old stories.
Yeah.
Because the Welsh were actually a lot better than the Scottish at holding on to their old stories.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, seems to me, they have druidic roots.
Yeah.
And so there's stories, so you read the story, and on one level it's really interesting. It also leads into the next part of the story, and it's on and on and on and on into big saga. So you read it at that level, and then you can see the symbolism within it, so you follow that, and then there's more, and there's more, and there's more. So do you want me to talk up?
I'm actually okay. Can you give me any examples of?
Yeah. Well, one of the symbols that we use is called the Awen, which simply means flowing spirit, or whatever, and it's like 3 drops and 3 like bits of light with 3 circles round.
Okay.
So that's the underworld, the middle world, and the upper world. But also the 3 drops symbolise the 3 drops of inspiration, which came from the cauldron. So if you Google Ceridwen's cauldron and Gwion, so that's just the way it sounds really. Ceridwen and Gwion. Then tells the story of transformation, initiation, and the whole story about the cauldron after Eating a Day, of course, the 3 drops that were received by Guillaume rather than who Ceridwen had intended it for. So there's just so much to that story and so many archetypes within it.
Yeah.
It's not ridiculous either for us to follow the Welsh stories, because long ago, back in the day, the whole of Strathclyde was Welsh speaking.
Yeah.
So we do have that link.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it was all so interlinked, everything.
Yes.
Do you know what? I think that's why I was finding it quite difficult to pick out bits that were maybe useful
God.
or more relevant, maybe specifically to Aaron.
Yes.
So do you have, I mean, how did you come into this faith? Like, was it something that was passed down through your family, or?
No, it wasn't. I was kind of loosely raised in Church of Scotland, and went away as we all do. Came back, and I guess I got to the point where I realised that I was sitting in the church and I felt hypocritical because it just didn't feel right.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of not the minister, it has to be said, but some of the members of the congregation, the older ones they were really judgmental.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were not displaying the kind of behaviour that I thought, for example, Jesus would. He was a great teacher.
It's all about kindness and compassion, isn't it? But I think a lot of people say the same thing about the church. Not all church groups, and not all people who follow the religion. But I think definitely with a mass, and especially with the older, generations as well. Like, and that's something that's passed on to them from their families. It's not something that they chose, but then. Never looked any further, and just people kind of blindly believe in something. It's interesting that you weren't kind of born into this and you've chosen to follow that path, because it's obviously something you recognise as being valuable.
I thought it doesn't sit well with me, and so I decided not to go back to church. Having tried quite hard, to be a Christian, but it was not fitting at all. I clearly felt there was some spiritual gap in my life, or I wouldn't have been trying to be a Christian. And again, it's just so patriarchal. It's like, where were the women? Why
absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Why is it everything that you do is so heavily judged, and there's so much weight on everything? Yeah,
and from the moment you or I were born, it's like, well, that's. You're bad already.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're already full of sin. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's the idea of sin for me.
You are a sinner.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, constantly everything. Even if something you've done with good intention, and surely even if you make a mistake, maybe you have sinned, but surely if you've done it with good intention, is it necessarily a sin? You're maybe not educated enough, or you maybe made a mistake, but did you didn't go out to cause anybody harm, or
It's like the divine or the universe. Would they not see the heart? And the idea that there's a God, my long white beard, peering over your shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at every tiny wee thing you do. No.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
What are you wearing?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you wearing today? Really? No.
Yeah.
No. There's Bride again, by the way.
So that is a real big.
Above the fireplace, if you look at Aaron Place names, you'll see St Bride, Kilbride. Do
you know what? I actually did notice that because we have somewhere we've got East Kilbride, back home. So
and West Kilbride.
Yeah, absolutely. So
everywhere. So it's probably worth a Google at Bride, and because
so the Bride is that this is what they're talking about. That's really interesting, actually, because you would never.
And because of where we're placed between Scotland and Ireland, this was a really busy place back in the day, back in the Neolithic, and of course they uncovered the curses and there's the standing stones. So it was a busy place, and we had oh God, what's the name? The shiny, sharp stone, very much sought after, that you get on Arran. Stone.
I don't know.
I could forget my own name. It might come back to me anyway. So it was a busy place.
Yeah.
and so gods and goddesses, they moved around with
Yeah,
people.
absolutely.
So what I like is, I like the idea also of indigenous idea of the divine,
Yeah.
because I kind of believe that if you practice, like for example, if I went to Tibet and used some of the Buddhist symbols or Reiki symbols, then I reckon they'd be more powerful because they're literally seeping out the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the same way here, although it's a bit of a balance, because even back in the Neolithic there was such a lot of influx, and we've always been that. There's been so many people passing through, and they've brought their own gods, but they've also taken up the local gods and goddesses, so it's a right mishmash.
Yeah.
Very interesting. There's a lot of names that are very reminiscent of some of the Egyptian names as well. Anyway, that is a sidetrack. So yes, so I began to just be interested in what actually did resonate with me, and so that was definitely a pagan path. So I kind of travelled on doing my own thing, as many do here, for ages, 20 years or more, and then ideas and things about Druidism began to pop up, and then Debbie, who I think you got in touch with first, Debbie and Steve appeared on the island just before COVID, and when I got to know them, I thought, okay, finally, I get it.
Sometimes it just takes meeting somebody else,
yes.
absolutely, to find someone you resonate with. That's nice, I like that.
Yeah.
So the paganism and Druidism, do they have quite similar roots? Are they quite similar in a sense? Yeah, because
I would say most of the pagans I know, it's very nature centric.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem that way. I just I wondered if, not that there was any kind of, animosity is the wrong word. Do you know what I mean? I wondered if there was any sort of fighting for space, or whether the two couldn't be kind of represented at the same time, but obviously that's not true, and you do have people who practice more than one different sort of combinations, which is really interesting, actually.
Absolutely. There's space for everybody, because how each person experiences the divine is entirely personal. It's like hearing a story. I would probably hear more of it if I heard it in English than if I heard it in Cantonese.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be picking up very much. And I just see it in that kind of way, and we can all, if we're all honouring nature and the intention is for the best, it's all good. I mean, we've had some of the Wiccans sometimes come and join us for a ritual. I'm smiling because the Wiccans like they like accoutrements.
Yeah, bits.
They love stars and things, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great. They're really the bunch that we know anyway, good-hearted people. Whereas what I do like about the Druid way is, yes, we do. Well, we certainly like a fire. And we like to be outdoors. But if for example I didn't have, what do I use? Some things I use. Some of the symbolic stuff, like for Samhain, there's when we do a ritual, we put down a hammer to symbolise. We're thinking of those who were workmen and artisans. Bread for the bakers. A knife for the warriors. If we didn't have any of these, that would be okay, because a lot of what we do, I'm sure the Wiccans do it too, is about rooting into the earth and having that connection and bringing that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't necessarily need the physical object. You've got the
You don't need stuff.
No, that's really interesting. I did read something about, because obviously the ancient Druids left no written accounts, no traces, whatever. But they do say they found things like axes thrown into peat bogs and things that are totally preserved, and they reckon that that's what that was. That was them honouring the warriors, and it was an offering to, sort of. There was no mention of like a god figure, which was the thing that like interests me, because that's and I'm not against any religion at all, but I've definitely never particularly found anything that I resonated with. I've never looked at a religion and been like, oh yeah, that's definitely for me. And the idea of having a deity or a god to worship has never appealed to me, because we're all here and we're physical things that I can see, and people spend a lot of their life worshipping something that they can't. Not that you have to be able to see it, obviously, but to worship a mythical, almost like human figure, when actually you're surrounded by, like you say, nature, and
it's right there in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely, it's right here. Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to go looking.
Now. And I would say the spark of divine is in you, me, everybody, and every living thing. And so it's like, here we are in this life. Enjoy it, appreciate it, love it. It's okay. There's the next life, but let's live in this one. Let's meet this one. Let's really appreciate it. And that's definitely another thing that is appealing. It just seems much more real. We're not delaying or putting off, or there seems to be an awful lot of higher thought, but it's all after you die.
Yeah, absolutely, which never seems to have much, that doesn't really hold much to me, because I'm not going to be there. Well, I will be there maybe in spirit, but will I? Nobody knows if it's a...
Exactly, and it is exactly that. There's a recognition that we don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There could be, I suppose, maybe the majority of people in the world think, oh well, this is one of many lives.
Yeah.
I can get that. And, or the collective consciousness again, which is get that too. But I don't absolutely know.
Yeah.
But even that, knowing that we don't know, opens things up. It doesn't close things down.
Yeah.
Which is
No, I like that. Do you feel like Aaron has that kind of special power that you feel like you need, or you want to have around you? Do you feel like it has that?
I do, but then I'm from here.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So I will be biased.
Yeah, I mean it is, and you come over on the ferry. When we came over, we had the 6 a.m. ferry this morning, but you're coming over and the sun's coming up and things, and it is like almost magical, because all the mountains and what is it, Ridge Island, it's known because all the mountains and ridges, and it's foggy and it's beautiful, and it is almost like kind of eerie but kind of like mythical at the same time. Like it's a really nice feeling that you get, and even when you kind of step on, like I love the rain. I'm biased. I love Scotland's weather. It's one of my favourite things about it. I find it so atmospheric, and like even driving along and like everything's sort of wet and damp, and it's nice to me. Like it feels good, and I feel like it definitely does have a kind of pull to it. Like
absolutely. Not everybody settles down here, but for example, Debbie and Steve, who definitely have, I think they came over for a day once, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and Debbie said, I could live here. And indeed, it just had that pull that this is the place that we're meant to be. Well,
absolutely.
And so it has been, but it certainly has a pull for me. I mean, I've looked out on Goat Fell for the majority of my life, and just that strength of being there, and the granite of it.
Yeah, it is very strong. Yeah, absolutely.
It is. It's really powerful. So I think it is special, and the apple thing as well. That for Druids, the apple is something that we would honour as well. It's the apple of knowledge. Yeah. Rather than being evil or eating it. No, it brings knowledge, but it's how you meet that.
Yeah, so it's funny that sort of like juxtaposition with the Christian Adam and Eve and the apple being bad and forbidden, and it's really interesting actually. It's funny how almost like it's like maybe Christianity has come around and not necessarily used these stories, but maybe taken some of the influence and sort of turned it on its head.
That's exactly it. Really.
That's quite interesting.
Are you, if you're looking at spirituality on Aaron, or is it more specifically Druidism?
Well, my initial research was going to be into tradition and pilgrimage. That's why I picked here, because the idea of the Standing Stones being sort of an ancient site of pilgrimage, and then when you look at cairns on top of mountains, that being kind of more modern pilgrimage, and then sort of looking at the difference between them.
Yes, the links, that's really interesting.
But the more I looked into it, the more I kind of was interested with the sort of spiritual connection, and especially with the Druidic religion in the island. I thought that was quite an interesting thing to look at. It was also much more specific, which I think will be easier. You know, because the idea is, I'm only 3 weeks into the semester, but you're supposed to be doing your research blind. Basically, you're kind of not supposed to have much of an idea of what you're supposed to kind of come and maybe find something that sparks a bit of interest, which I think I have, which is really nice, because I was a little bit like, when I was first, I was like, oh, I'll go to Aaron, and I was like, I'll do this, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I was like, what am I going to find anything? I was like, what do I look at? And it was one of my university tutors suggested that I try and contact somebody, which was something I hadn't even thought about doing, and I wasn't sure initially how much of a private thing it was, which is why in my original email I did say, I was like, look, if nobody's comfortable speaking to me, I do totally understand, because people's religion is very much their own, and I didn't want to come in and be like, I would like to ask you loads of questions that are quite personal and quite special, you know.
I think you've caught it just on the cusp, actually, because it is turning, it is changing palpably. So
that's actually a really interesting thing then, to see that happen. So
do
you feel like definitely in the last sort of couple of years it's become much more maybe accepted? Is that the right word? Or
it's definitely come out. The last ritual we did, the autumn equinox one, we had 2 ladies come and join us, 2 much older, well, I say much older, not much older than me, say about 10, 15 years older than me, and they're associated with the local museum,
right,
which is along that way. And Sheila, one of them, said she had in the museum, they do lots of e-displays, and I don't really pay enough attention, but she said we had like all the churches on the island, and she said I noticed she had active churches and ones that have gone into sort of, and they're all, well, a lot of them are in important sites. There's one in Shiskin that is where there was a grove, a definite grove there. Anyway, sidetrack. So she said more and more I was like moving active churches to non-active churches, and she looked at it one day and reckoned, that has to be something else.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
So she, to give her credit, she embarked on a journey of discovery herself. To, well, what is going on?
Yeah.
So she, well, there's more than the Druids, and it is seeping out of the ground. There's Elaine, who does a Spirit Within, which is a spiritual circle, but I would say maybe a little more, no harm to it, a little more kind of light-hearted.
Yeah, okay.
I think she likes lights and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's Russell, who is, he's only in his 20s, but he began a spiritual circle on a Sunday evening here in Holly, our garden room. So it's very well attended, and he came to speak to us, and he said that he'd noticed a bit of a gap. He'd been to Elaine's group, and then he noticed us, and he said we're looking for younger people who are actually a lot more serious about their spiritual journey. Yeah. So he has begun what's he call it, a solstice group. Okay. And they do a bit of yoga, I think a bit of storytelling. It's a spiritual circle. Sunday night in Holly. So there is that going on as well as all the more underground stuff. Yeah. Where there's a group of women who would head off into the woods, particularly at the maybe Beltane and Samhain, and do some drumming. So we do have a women's drumming circle here as well, which is good, and that's kind of part, because it feeds the story, the whole context of where we are now. So to appreciate what has gone before and distill from that how to meet here and now and how we then go forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting how you've got so many different groups of people all kind of with the same sort of core morals. Do you know what I mean? Like whether it's a drumming circle or a prayer circle or do you know whatever, it's all kind of based on the same thing, but like all also quite separate. That's quite interesting.
Yes.
It's nice.
Yeah. And I'm really happy that a lot of them use the space around here because that was the intention.
Yeah, it's nice as well that it's not because I think that's always been the thing about the church. Like the church is a place where you go if you are Christian, but otherwise, it's not that maybe you're not welcome. But you know, if you want to get married in a church, sometimes you have to, depending on the church, you have to be part of the faith. But it's interesting that you're much more open in the sense that like, oh no, it's a space. Whatever you want to use it for, that's totally up to you.
But also it helps with each person's personal journey because you might get in a particular interest where you just enjoy being outdoors and then you get the feel for this feels special and that's okay and enjoy it at that level, and then if you want to take another step that's fine, and if you don't that's also fine. Me and my partner, so he's actually here with me. He's gone back. He's taken our dog back to where we're staying because he's very cold and very wet. This morning. But we both do a lot of sort of hill walking, a lot of outdoor stuff because we both really enjoy it on a maybe almost a spiritual level. Although I don't think either of us would ever have referred to it as that. But it definitely mentally, physically, we feel better for being outdoors. When we come home at the end of the day, you feel better. You feel almost like, he says it all the time. He's like, it's almost like you can breathe easier. When you're outside. You can literally. And in fact, like when Malcolm does his forest bathing thing, there's a wee bit of the science thrown in there as to why you actually can breathe more easily. So it's lovely, and it's lovely that we all interact. I believe there is a group of younger people who are on the island and who really want to follow the old ways, the ways of the ancestors. I think they're much more private though. And I absolutely appreciate that and honour that, but also, as I've said, what we do is we see how do we use that in the here and now. So we'll see, but the fact that I even have heard that they are around. Yeah,
is a big thing.
Because they wouldn't years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any specific places on the island that you maybe use, bar maybe your own sort of spaces that you use or you find are powerful or spiritual for you, specifically you, or for your group?
There's one place that you're staying over.
Yeah, we're here all tonight, and we don't leave until midnight tomorrow. We get the midnight ferry back, so we've got the full day tomorrow.
Is there a midnight ferry?
There is a midnight ferry, yeah. I know, I found that quite hard to believe as that. I don't know if it's exactly midnight or if it's almost midnight. But
what are they doing?
I think because we're in a van, we could only get the very early or the very, very late ones. I think either that or they were all booked, but I don't think they were. I think it was just because of our weight.
We quite like the idea though of, anyway, you probably know something about ferry problems and won't even go there.
Well, we did get I actually wasn't aware, and then I was in I actually had a tattoo appointment the other week, and I was in talking to somebody, and he was like, we've tried to go to Ireland 3 times and the ferry's always cancelled, and I was like, don't say that. I was like, oh God, but we had no issues. And obviously coming over, it was really rainy and it was really windy, and I was like, is it going to be cancelled? But no, everything was fine, so that's been good.
There we go. No, that's good. One place that's really accessible, and it's got lots of little walks, and I love going there, and even if I don't have much time, I can go there. So it's the woods at Markland.
Okay.
So as you travel through the village, going along that way, as if you're going to Corrie, and then you can go up and over the string towards the standing stones. Don't do that. Go round the corner.
Okay.
Travelling again as if you were heading to Corrie. So you pass Duchess Court on the right and Arran Aromatics. Go on, and then you pass the castle entrance, and then there's a wide corner where the sea is just right there, and the castle wall is on the left. You pass the last entry to the castle.
Mm-hmm.
And on the corner, there's an opening, and you can go and park your car there, or you can go a bit further up as well, because there are houses further up in the woods, and there are lots of little walks through the trees. I take the first one, the second one, and if you go up to maybe the second or third one, they interlink, and they're just lovely because they take you through the trees, and there's there's a few works of art that Tim has done in the woods that you come across.
Oh, beautiful. That's lovely.
That's
definitely
really
worth
lovely.
a little look then. Yeah,
It's lovely,
100%.
and it need not take all day.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
You can dip in, but that's a lovely. I really love that. And I love plouching about in the barn.
Yeah, I mean it's gorgeous in the back of there. I've never even known that was there. Yeah, it's one of those places where you might have walked up, but you would have gone, because you're so used to living in the built-up area where everybody owns a piece of land. So if you're going through a gate, usually it means you're walking onto somebody's property. So there's a very much a resistance to walk through a gate, or to even if it's not locked or if there's no sign or anything on it, but you still wary that you might walk through it for somebody to be on the other side and be like, oh no, you can't be in here. So it's actually nice to come down and realise that it is all
absolutely
here.
Yeah. The other, see on the other side of that, there's a right of way, which is really important that we keep that going. The land around has just been sold, and it was sold a while ago, and we've seen nothing of the person who. So we're quite conscious of needing to keep that right of way open. So on the other side of the building there's a wee path, we can go back that way, and it goes up to where there used to be a bridge there, and then there was a tree that we used to climb across, but that also has been worn away by time. And then there's a spot further up the river, which has always been. Been a bit of a party spot. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is fine if they tidy up, which they often do.
Absolutely. I think that's the issue with it.
Run away with the wheelie bin as well. And somebody's drawn on the trees, which makes me cross. Yeah. So that's just not respectful. But it's fine. It's one of these. It's just one of the ways that people use and enjoy.
And people do like to mark. And always have done, like to leave a maybe lettering's not a purposeful. I would like to leave a mark here, but people writing on trees and things has always been carving their names into things, and even if it's graffiti and spray paint and that, it's not always respectful, but it is something that people do, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it's like I've been here.
Yeah, it's a shame as well because it's one of those things that you reflect on as you get older. You've maybe done something like that when you were younger, because at the time you don't see the importance, or you don't see the value in a tree. Because you're a kid, do you know what I mean? You do stupid things, and then as you get older, you go, "Oh God, that was awful! I should never have done that." Yeah.
So there's a spot there, which is fine. It's nice that it's used like people from the houses over that away. They often take it's a shortcut, so they go across the field and down the side of the river. And, more and more they're cut through the garden, which is okay. I mean that's fine. But I said to a couple of boys, don't forget, go down there sometimes as well. Keep that right away open.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting, all these different places that are significant, even though perhaps not all the people who are using them see it as a spiritual significance. It's a place that is, it's by the river, and it's still doing them good, and they're still using it. It's important.
And it's funny because sometimes you maybe don't see the significance, like I said, at the time, but it's later on that you look at it, and maybe you walk past it as an adult, or when you're a bit older and you have all these memories of being there, and you're like, oh, then it has significance. That's
sure.
Interesting. I like that. Yeah. No, I'll definitely take that on board, and I will go and have a look at those little trails. Just see if I had anything else that I could have asked you. How many people can you say roughly are in sort of your circle?
Right, so there's Debbie, Steve, me and Chrissy. We're the Druids, but there are regulars, like my husband joins us usually unless he's working, and then there are another 1, 2, 3. I would say probably there's about maybe a dozen regulars.
It's actually
Which
quite a lot of
come
people,
and
yeah.
go. And then sometimes we get a visit from, there's a pagan group from Largs that sometimes they come visit us, and last time they just came off the boat and there was a dozen of them, and I went, oh, we need to get more food. But so they come visit,
that's lovely.
which
I
is
like that.
lovely. And sometimes the Wiccans join us. We tend to know when they're coming. So, you know, there can be as many as a couple of dozen, actually.
That's actually really interesting.
Which is lovely. And there are some traditions. Oh, Steve started. I don't even know how to. Where would you start with Clota? He made a Clota, goddess of the Clyde. So there's a whole story which he's linked up with the Mary Llwyd, which is a Welsh thing again. So it could be. So he has this horse's skull with a bit of cow bone and deer in it, and so at storytelling time, he's really tall as well. He's well over 6 feet. So he has this horse, Mary Llwyd, it has red eyes and a clacking mouth, and it's like it adds to the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
It adds to the story. So what is that then? That's myth building in the here and now.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, folk music. This is folk tales. So we're picking up the roots of something maybe and making it ours. So he's a bit of a hand in that, because Clyde, of course, is important, and I'm interested how I think the Romans called the Clyde the noisy river.
Yeah.
As on the west coast, whereas is it the Tay or is the quieter one?
Quiet.
But as the Clyde comes rattling through, she scourges and cleans, and she's got a bit of energy about her. Yeah.
It's nice to see how it's less of what I thought as being some sort of really ancient religion with really secretive roots, as opposed to actually being something that you guys are kind of creating yourselves. Do you know what I mean? And like I really like that. I think that's really lovely, because it means it's almost quite a modern thing, which is wild, because I thought I was looking at it from a really ancient perspective, and obviously it was. But there's a bit of both. Yeah, I know, I really like that. I like the sort of openness to always changing and growing and evolving, and I think that's really important, especially when it comes to religion, because it gets very, it's very rigid, it's very stuck in one position, you know what I mean? There's a yes and a no, and this is the way it's always been, so this is the way we're doing it, which doesn't work, you know, because society is constantly changing. And
I mean, we do, for rituals and that, we do wear robes. Not all Druids do, but I listened to what Debbie and Steve were saying about it, and I recognised that the place for that is the taking the, and it's not even the mindset, it's the mind, body, spirit, the whole essence of stepping into something. It's like crossing a threshold. It's like, here's ordinary stuff, this is special stuff, and so I meet it in this way. And so stepping into it is not, it's not just a dressing up.
Or maybe stepping out of your everyday self as well, you know. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yes.
No, that's really
it takes it to a different state. I mean, if you wanted to come and join us for one of our rituals, you'd be very
that would be lovely, actually.
It's always nice to visitors. And if the cottage here was empty, God, we've been really busy. October's very busy, but the cottage was empty, you're welcome to use it.
Oh, that's lovely, thank you. That's so nice.
It's kind of it's been a great resource. It's not a commercial let for many reasons. But it's just really handy. Because we can offer it if there's a space.
It's always good to have the option to offer as well, do you know what I mean? Because it does make things easier, especially when you are on an island, you know, and you don't have the luxury of being able to just drive home whenever you want, you know.
And you can't always get your vehicle on the ferry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh. You know. So and otherwise, I mean, any questions at all, just email me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, Debbie.
That would be really, really helpful, actually. I probably will need... There'll be
it's
things I'll have forgotten, do you know what I
you're
mean?
doing.
But
oh my God,
yeah, it
it's
is.
like a big something.
I think that's... I'm quite glad I've managed to narrow it down just a little bit. But
Yes.
initially, when I was looking, I mean, even just looking at Arran itself, I was like, what do I look at? I was like, it's got so much history, and because obviously,
Yeah.
you know, you had Celts, and then you had people coming, you know, the Scots coming over from Ireland. You had, you know, so you've got like
Yeah,
this
we've got a
ever
lot
sort
of
of
flow.
changing and evolving
Yeah.
sort of history, and trying to sort of track that back was just daunting. And I did find that this was much easier, sort of pigeonhole, and speaking to yourself has been amazing. It's been very useful.
Section out a wee bit with boggle.
Yeah. My only other question is, can I take your photograph?
Oh,
Is
James.
that okay?
How can
Are you sure? Yeah, I don't want to put you out. It is just a Polaroid. It's not a digital, so there will
No,
only be
that's
one copy,
fine.
and it will be mine. But yeah, you don't even have to look at me if you don't want to. I know some people don't like so, and it's quite, I feel like it's quite an invasive thing sometimes. When someone's like, "Can I take your photograph?" You're like, "Oh God."
Do you need the light on?
No, it's got a flash on it.
Fancy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, you've been really helpful, and I'll definitely keep your contact details if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, absolutely. And if you're able to, I mean, we do like we celebrate 4 quarters and the cross quarters. So there's Samhain, then there's the winter solstice around Yule, then there's Imbolc. So there's always
Yeah,
about every
always
6
something
weeks
going
there's
on.
a celebration.
Well, actually, we're staying in Lamlash. So my partner, his brother, has just moved over here. He's a doctor. I don't know.
Right.
His name is. God, that's really bad. Zach Thompson.
Oh.
Tall, bald, sort of beard. Lovely, very, very
I
lovely.
don't always know the new ones now, but when Malcolm been in GP.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you did when you mentioned that. I was like, I wonder maybe if you know who he is. He'll probably, if he doesn't. I mean, it's a fairly small place, and I mean he's in Lamlash, so it's so close. So I reckon they'll probably meet at some point. But we're actually staying in his house just now. So we are planning on coming back over at some point. Because we're both, like I said, we're both very keen hill walkers, and we love the outdoors, and we're very big on Scottish culture, and you know the Scottish. I think I'm a big believer that Scotland is a beautiful, amazing place, and doesn't always get the credit that it deserves, and isn't always kind of treated as sort of separate to England and Wales, and it's not a Brexit thing. It's just a culture thing for me. I think the culture is different, the people are different, and I think it's very obvious.
It is, and even those who choose to come from, well, like Debbie, Steve. I mean, there's quite a lot of English people moved up here again for all sorts of reasons, but they tend to have a certain outlook in life that is much more resonant with, because there is a big difference.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
We have, interestingly, there's quite a flow between Arran and Yorkshire.
Oh, really?
Because particularly in Whiting Bay, I believe that back in the 60s, maybe our population was going down a bit, and actually there was an ad placed in a Yorkshire paper, come and stay here, and well, they took it up, and they have, and so there's like a Yorkshire enclave in Whiting Bay, so there's lots of connections.
Yeah. It's funny how that happens,
Yeah.
It's strange,
it really
but
is.
interesting, yeah.
Aye. Very good. Well, it's been really nice to meet
and thank you
you
so much. Do you mind if I go and
Not at
take
all.
some photos of your
Oh,
garden
God,
and
no.
stuff? Is that okay?
No, absolutely.
Perfect.
Help yourself if you can manage it.
Yeah, oh no, I'll be fine. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And for the tea. Thanks for the tea. Tea's always appreciated, yeah. Like I said, we've just been up to the standing stones and stuff, and we've been out all day, so I think we were in the van just outside, we were a little bit early, and like I started to fall asleep, and I was like, oh, I could really use a cup of tea. And that's just sort of difficult. But thank you so much.
Lovely, really nice to meet you,
You
Ailey,
too.
and we'll maybe see you again.
That would be lovely.
Alright.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Up and
You can either go, that way to take more photos.
perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.